This segment is filtration, and so let's go look at the tank that we're going to filter. It's a cider, and it hasn't been filtered yet. So bear with me. I'm probably going to trip over everything as I walk through here. Okay, so we're going to go up this ladder and check out this tank and see the clarity. So you see their variable capacity. Like I said, these are 1,000-liter tanks. The college has 500-liter tanks. So up the ladder I go in a safe manner. And you can see down there is the tank lid. So I'm going to deflate it. With this right hand. That's deflated it. Sometimes you have to take off the knob all the way to have it deflate, and then I don't have a fancy winch like you guys have at the college, but I'll bring it up. Like that, and rest it. There's the wine. I changed hands here. So let's look at the clarity. I'm going to do a little dip and look at it. So it looks fairly clean. Not too bad. This has been racked once, and because there's no protein naturally in cider, we don't have to bentonite fine it. So it's just been racked off the yeast leaves and into this tank. So I'm thinking, well, when we get to the filter, I'll show you what kind of grade that I've decided on to filter this through. Okay. Here's the plate and frame filter that we'll be using to pad filter the cider. And here are the filter pads. They're K150. They're made by Sites. They're Sites brand, and by Paul Canada or Paul Corporation. They're based in Germany, I believe. And these are 400 by 400 millimeters, which is 40 by 40 centimeters. Okay, and the grade is almost, it's a polished filter. You can see there's rough on one side and smooth on the other. And so filtration is always through the rough side to the smooth side. So it's always in that direction. Now for the direction of the filter, I always like to filter going in the bottom and then out the top. So you have to watch the flow rate, or not the flow rate, the flow of it to figure out which direction. And there is a really good image in the textbook that shows that. But as you can see, the wine comes out the bottom here, and then it also comes out here, and then it has to go through one pad. So I'm going to put one in the right direction. So that would go in that direction. So as you can see, get it oriented. As you can see, it's the wine is going to go through this hole into this plate. This plate has a hole in it. It's hollow. And in this plate, call it the dirty plate if you want, the unfiltered wine, it'll go that way and that way. So that's why I'm putting that next to the filter pad with the course facing that way, so that it'll go, come in through this pad, through this plate, through this pad, into the clean side. Then that gets collected over here, and it goes out the outlet. Same thing on the bottom. It's the same thing as over here. The top and the bottom are connected. This is the dirty side, and then collected over here for the clean wine. And so the rest of the pads go in there alternating. So this one is going to go the opposite direction. this way. So once again, the wine is coming through here, and it's going into this plate and going that way and that way now as well, and being collected by this plate for the clean wine over here. I don't have that oriented very well there. So I'm going to set this whole filter press up with those pads with that thought, and then we'll look at it again. So we're ready to wet the pads now. So I've got all the pads in here. I actually took out some of the plates. There's 13 pads here, and you can do a quick check. If you look at the pads, you should see alternating coarse, 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 right? The other thing to look for when you're setting it up is to make sure these are all oriented so they're not, so the gaskets along here are not pinching anything, and also so that it's all looks good. It's nice and even. All right, so we're going to turn on the water, and I have an adapter made up for this down here, and it's a hose fitting to a tri-clamp fitting. You can see the water coming out now out of the top. You can also see it squirting out here a little bit, so I'll need to tighten it. They're still dry in there, so it'll take a while for them to get wet, and then I'll tighten it a little bit more. I usually like to keep all the valves on, have water go through them, so there's water going through that one. I've got this throttled off just a little bit to increase some pressure over here, so that water comes out that valve as well, and the bottom valve down here. All right, so that's wetting, and we'll do that for about an hour. Like I said, I'll tighten it to make sure it's not leaking anymore. And there's a bar here, and we'll crank on that to tighten it. Pads are now wetted, and we're going to start wine through the lines. So if you remember, this is what it looked like when it started. A little bit cloudy, but fairly clear. This is the first filtration it's had. So let's walk through the lines. So on the filter, we're going into the bottom, coming out of the top, and then the pump is over here. That goes to nowhere right now. Well, it's coming out of the tank in the back. You can't see that. Oh, wow. Yeah, so it's coming out of this tank, a 1,000-liter tank, and we're going to catch water. So there's a lot of water from all that wetting in those pads. So now we have to catch wine. So we have to find out where the transition is between the two. So I'm going to turn it on a very low speed with the remote, and we're going to taste it off right here. I think that's it. You have to be fairly quick when you're catching wine. And notice the color, just barely brown. That's because of the stripping. With it's not water anymore, this is cider, but the initial part of it is stripped by the new pads. But it is cider. One important thing to monitor during the filtration is the pressure differential. So once again, this is the inlet here. So that's the pressure coming in, and then this is the pressure coming out. So it's zero coming out. It's pretty much going to an empty tank. But that pressure is where it's coming in, and so it's pushing against the pads as they get dirtier and dirtier. So you don't want to be more than 1.5 bar differential, 1.5 bars of pressure differential. So you can see that one's at 1 right now. Hopefully you can see that. That's at 1. The other one's at 0. So once it gets up to 1.5, you pretty much blinded the pads and they're plugged up. You can see the clarity. This is it coming out now, and this was at 5 or 10 minutes into the filtration, so the color came back really quickly. Just that little bit of stripping in the beginning, compared to it before. We're about the end of the filtration. This is the last tank. And you can see I've got it just above the yeast leaves on the bottom. So this wine has been on yeast leaves ever since harvest. This is the light leaves. It's been racked once. But once again, this is for sparkling. So a little bit of leaves is good. And I'm controlling it right now with the remote. This is the tank that it's going into. And a little bit of a pro tip. You can keep bringing this out of the wine so that it's just above the surface as it's filtering, so that way if you have any air that's entrained while you're filtering, it just bubbles into the last ½ inch. All done. So now I'm just scavenging some wine from the bottom of the filter, on the clean side, and from the hoses as well. And so to recap, the first thing when filtering wine is make sure the orientation of the pads is correct. Second thing, wet the pads for at least an hour, if not more. Catch the wine because there's water in those pads. So when you start filtering, or you start pumping the wine out of the tank, make sure you catch the transition between the water and the wine. And CO2 the tanks that you're going into, make sure there's no splashing, and keep the pressure less than 1.5 bar differential between the inlet and outlet. And you'll do just fine.